Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 504, Compassion and Cooperation. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I will continue with the approximation. Here, I'll look at how sometimes we could see ourselves as just an approximation of ourselves. Then it's on to compassion and cooperation. Here, I look at how compassion and cooperation could help with relating to autistic people, how it could help with educational situations, relationships, and more. Today's show will include background footage from Sam's Knob and Mountains to Sea Trail. Sam's Knob is located off the Blue Ridge Parkway, south of Asheville. You go south of Asheville, past Mount Pisgah, past US 276, maybe about 10 miles past that, there'll be a road off to the right. You follow that road to the end of the road and park. There, Sam's Knob's Trail starts. It goes well along some woods, and then down into a meadow, and then up Sam's Knob. When you get to the end of the meadow, you take the trail to the right. Once you get to the top of Sam's Knob, the trail splits, and there's really two peaks in a sense, for the top is fairly level and spread out, even with some blueberries. Also, I got some background footage from Mountains to Sea Trail North. This is located at the Walker's Knob Overlook. This is between Craggy Gardens and Mount Mitchell, north of Asheville, North Carolina. The trail goes up the mountain and eventually comes out on a ridge where it's semi-level. So, now, let's continue with the approximation. We'll recall them and then recall them again later, maybe a few months later or a year later, and it goes on, and especially as we get older, we recall a memory so many times, it's like a copy of a copy of a copy, and obviously it gets a little distorted. But hold on here. Perhaps with their memories being in the field and perhaps witnessed by the same field, I guess similar to the presence I described a couple episodes again, an omnipresent field of energy that is, well, it's always there, it's always with us, and it helps us out, perhaps even performing miracles, but at least records our thoughts, our attitudes, our motivations, and our memories, what happened. And all this is kind of recorded by this presence, by this Akashic field, or the Akashic field might be part of the presence. I'm assuming the presence has many aspects to it, from performing miracles to telepathy and perhaps recording events. So the recording events or recording memories might be the cosmic field, and Some of the other might be the presence. Sure. Or maybe it's all the Akashic field. I don't know. Anyway, the Akashic field was first described by Edgar Cayce, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess you would have to refer to his works to get a handle on exactly what it is. And if it involves some of the other aspects I'm talking about, like telepathy and miracles and other things, sure, that might occur from an eternal, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient presence that's with us, almost like God, or it is God being with us. Sure. Anyway, so we have this energy field, which I guess is at least part of God. I guess maybe we could say that and that would be fair. Anyway, moving on. So, what I'm saying is maybe there's a way to access their memories or experience and really know exactly what happened and access them perfectly if we could do it in the right way using the Akashic field. So, but usually we can't do it right, and often our memories are imperfect. Let's move along. So we try to strive for perfection, but we never fit into this exact model of perfection. We could never be perfect. We only could strive to be. Somehow, we just come up as an approximation of perfection. And even when we do achieve perfection, it's often only temporary. Somehow it's hard to make it last. So instead of having perfection, we're kind of close to it, but not quite. Sure, and other times we might be far, far away from perfection, depending on what we're pursuing and how well we could do it, what we're pursuing. Sometimes the situation is too difficult and we come up short. So we could never be perfect. And because of that, well, we need a little flexibility here. Well, I'm talking about, us being an approximation of ourselves. Well, we are never our true selves, in a sense. We're only kind of close to it. We waver around our true self one way or another. Sometimes we might be a little meaner than we should be. Sometimes we might be a little nicer than we should be. What I mean by we should be is how we are as in a person overall. What's the averages of all our behavior? I guess as you could look at it that way. Perhaps most of the time we're nice, but maybe a quarter of the time we're mean. Well, on some days we might be mean a lot more than the quarter of the time. In other days we might not be mean at all. So we're kind of bouncing around this average. And you could do that for any aspect of your life. From aspects of behavior to physical characteristics such as blood sugar or blood pressure. So, we're always kind of changing. We're not quite at our average self or whatever, or perfect self. We're a little bit this way or a little bit that way. We kind of, circle around it, so to speak. But since we have all this uncertainty, and since we're only an approximation of ourselves, well, obviously we change sometimes over our life. And so we might change quite a bit as a person. And so we're, in a sense, not the same person our whole life because we changed so much. Well, that's fine. We just gotta have the flexibility to be able to handle the change ourselves, which sometimes is easier said than done. But in theory, we all should have some flexibility for change. And so we just have to try to tap into that. Sometimes change can be tough, such as with the loss of a loved one. Sometimes change is wonderful, such as moving to a new town with a great job. Anyway, so it's all up and down with change, but we just got to be flexible so we can change. That's the important thing. And that way the change won't be so upsetting or traumatic to us. If we're a little more flexible, perhaps the change will be less traumatizing and we'll be able to adjust to it faster and be able to function better, or at least be able to function a little quicker. Sure. And that could help us, especially if it's a situation like a new job. So we just have to remember to stay flexible, adaptable, ready to change. We have to have the right attitude for it. We have to realize that we can never have what we really want, and that will often come up short, but everything's going to be okay anyway. We can't have the attitude where it's all or nothing, and we have to have everything our way, or else we're going to be upset. If we have that attitude, well, chances are we won't get our way and we'll be upset. But if we have an attitude of being more flexible and adaptable and realize that often we don't get what we want, well, perhaps we'll be less upset. Anyway, so we need an environment too that will encourage us to develop and grow. We need that environment of flexibility. Sure. And that's important. We can't have society, be it the government or a church or a religion, or I guess even a school system, trying to say who we should be and what we should be like. Well, we could have guidelines, sure, of what it would be nice to be like, especially with behavior. But sometimes we're going to fall short. And we have to have a little bit of flexibility for that, both in ourselves and the people around us, to be able to handle us when we goof up or do something wrong. Sure, if we could just be a little more tolerant of each other and try to understand how we make mistakes and how other people make mistakes. Try to be a little more forgiving. Sure, that will help us develop and grow and help other people develop and grow. And that's what we need. An environment where we can change and develop, and where we are supported and not criticized. And that all starts from understanding our mistakes and understanding other people's mistakes and being forgiving with them and trying not to hold everybody to strict standards, but be a little flexible. And hopefully everything will move along and work out anyway. Or at least an approximation of it. I hope you have enjoyed this section of the Casey Waters Show. Now it is time for compassion and cooperation. Here I look at the importance of compassion and cooperation and how it could help with relating to autistic people in educational settings and even in relationships and more. So, let's dive in. Well, we kind of start with the default setting, so to speak, at least for many people, often enough for me. Am I relaxed, bored, not much to do? After all, I'm retired. Well, no, it's not like that. Not for me. No, I'm busy. I got a lot going on. Sometimes too much going on. And it just seems like I always have so much to do. Sometimes I get exhausted, wore out. As my sister would say, I hit a wall. Well, when she hits a wall, she might take a nap or take it easy. Well, for me, I don't have time for that. I gotta keep going. So I gotta go through the wall, in a sense. Somehow keep going and going. Well, eventually gotta take a break to eat and rest, but it just seems there's so much to do. So what is all of this? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the exhaustlature. It's a word I made up. I guess it's spelled E-X-A. Hold it. No, scratch that. E-X-A-U-S-T-L-A-T-U-R-E. The exhaustlature. The literature of exhaustion. How you describe what led to you just being so wore out and incapable of doing almost anything, at least perhaps for a brief time, because you just had too much to do that day. So you might describe it, sometimes in relative detail, especially with the assistance of voice recognition software, but often is very brief, sometimes just saying, I'm exhausted. The literature of exhaustion. The exhaustlature. So what? Well, as I said, it's often the default situation. In other words, it's often how we are most of the time. We're just a little busy and got a little too much going on. So what I'm getting at is we need something to help us with this. Something to take the pressure off. Something to make things a little easier for us so we can get through all the endless stuff we have to do. Is there help on the way? Well, perhaps so. Well, and I guess it's not just help on the way for you. Yeah, you gotta be help on the way for other people too. It's a back and forth thing. We gotta work together. Compassion and cooperation. So, we have to realize what this is. Not only is compassion and cooperation a way to make things a little easier for us, perhaps, but it is also, in a sense, the mission, the purpose of life. Sure, love, compassion, empathy. It really is, quote, what's going on. It really is the purpose of life. It's life's mission. It's what we're up to. Sure, we got a lot to do in other ways too, obviously, and it's all very important. But perhaps the most important part is how we deal with the love, compassion, empathy, and similar situations, similar emotions or states of mind. So, there's this overarching or overreaching arch of compassion. It goes from one horizon across the zenith to another horizon, covering the whole sky, perhaps. An overreaching arch of compassion above us. It's like the compassion of God rains down upon us. What do we do with it? Well, if we want to get much use of it, we got to start by helping other people. Then perhaps other people will help us, and maybe fate or God or whatever will help us too. So, we just got to start by reaching out and helping others with compassion and cooperation. Who do we help? Well, yeah, we help almost everybody. This spreads out and covers almost all situations. Sure it does. So we could just talk about a few situations and you could fill in the rest that might be relevant in your life. As I said, compassion and cooperation are useful in almost all situations. So, what about dealing with diverse people? People of different cultures and backgrounds. People of different races. Perhaps even speaking different languages. Well, we have to get along. We need each other. We might not think we do, but in fact, we probably do. So we gotta be open to compassion and cooperation with diverse people. People we can't even speak to because we don't know their language. People from different cultures, religions, people of different races, people from different countries, and so on and so on. We have to embrace this diversity. And I guess it includes, well, all sorts of diversity. Sure. I guess from gay people to trans people to straight people. Well, gay people have to get used to straight people to some degree, even though that might seem funny. But in some cases, it's true. Gay people get caught up there in their own community. Well, and they're not used to dealing with straight people. Well, sometimes straight people aren't used to dealing with gay people. Well, we all got to deal with each other. We live with each other. We gotta have compassion and cooperation. We gotta have compassion and cooperation for everybody, for immigrants, for people who don't speak our language, people of different backgrounds. By having this compassion and cooperation, well, we could make their lives easier and help them fit in better. Also, they might be able to help us, perhaps with valuable resources or information. Sure, there's some kind of exchange that could happen. It's beneficial to us all. We should look into it and be ready to help diverse people. But it goes beyond that. What about autistic people? Well, sure. Of course, I got marginal autism myself. I guess I like to think I'm largely recovered from it. I pulled out of it. I'm integrated with society better. Of course, when I was young, let's say from age 3 through 8, well, I was a little more in my own world. Sure. Able to shut down perception, so I only see and hear what I'm imagining. Well, gee, it's fun. Sure, I could still pull it off, even in modern times, although not near as often. Anyway, so, with autism, well, sometimes, well, you're just in your own world. And I guess this is even more so when you're more autistic. I was only marginally autistic. So, some people are so much in their own world that it's hard to relate to other people, to concentrate on things. And so that's where your compassion and cooperation.
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2@caseywaters.com.